Hello there. Welcome back to another episode of Star Wars in the Galaxy, watching all the Star Wars we can get our hands on. I'm Eli.
I'm Jacob.
And today we have 3 great episodes of Star Wars Rebels to talk about today. This is episode 180 of Star Wars in the Galaxy, episode 5 of season 22. And yeah, today we are talking about Legacy, a princess on Lothal, and the Protector of Concord Dawn. A lot to cover today. Jacob, would you like to kick us off with summaries?
Yes. So in Legacy, we start with Ezra's vision. He has a vision where he is following a white Lothcat. He has visions of the past and the future, and he sees his parents. He rushes to Kanan and Hera and says that he saw his parents and that he thinks that they are out there and that they are still alive. Kanan and Hera say, of course, Ezra, we want to help you find your parents, but Kanan cautions him that Force-related visions, dreams, apparitions of this kind can be misleading, and that he cannot only see what he wants to see. Meanwhile, over Lothal, Agent Kallus, Admiral Constantine, the fifth brother, and the seventh sister are gathered together, and Agent Kallus has independently verified what the seventh sister found, thanks to Ezra mouthing off in front of the apartment building back in Future of the Force, that the rebels are stationed on Garel. Meanwhile, back on Garel in the Ghost, Kanan and Ezra are using Imperial prison records to find the prisoner profile of a prisoner from the recent Imperial prison break that they are finding out about at the same time. Do they think that can lead to Ezra's parents? So they find this prisoner X10, and Ezra and the crew are getting ready to go. However, that is when the Empire shows up on Garel in force with a big invasion force, all the Star Destroyers, and they are closing in on the rebellion. Ezra, Kanan, the whole crew, they're outside the Ghost, and they're fighting off the Empire. We see Ezra go absolutely ham on Agent Kallus, nearly charge headlong into the two Inquisitors before Kanan manages to stop him from such a rash decision. And the whole rebel fleet, or everyone who is on Garel, takes off, and they manage to escape the Imperial blockade, including the tractor beams of the Star Destroyer, not without losing a couple of their valuable transport ships, but they do manage to make it back. Ezra and Kanan take the Phantom and go back to Lothal, where they found that Ezra's old house, his family's old home, was burnt to the ground, razed by the Empire to send a message. However, the white Lothcat from Ezra's visions reappears, and he puts a tracker on the Lothcat, and they go all the way out to the mountains, where they find Ryder Azadi, an ex-governor of Lothal, who was accused of treason and put in Imperial prison for supporting Ezra's parents as they spoke out against the Empire. And he tells Ezra that, tragically, his parents died while helping others escape during the same Imperial prison break that let him go free. We end the episode with Ezra seeing his parents one last time in a vision of Lothal during its better pre-Imperial days, and then staring out at the night sky with his Jedi Master, Kanan. Okay, I'm pretty hazy because it's been a minute. I'm pretty hazy on the other two. Let me just get my thoughts in order for A Princess on Lothal. Very briefly, they're coming in. Ryder get quote-unquote kidnapped. Quote-unquote kidnapped. They devise a plan. Okay, yeah. So, all right, here we go. In A Princess on Lothal, we have a very, very special, a well-loved figure, Princess Leia, with 3 Alderaanian transport ships, is showing up on a so-called mercy mission to Lothal, a so-called aid mission, humanitarian mission for refugees on Lothal, refugees from all the strip mining that the Empire has been doing, which is displacing people. Of course, in reality, she is in contact with the rebels and is planning to stage a ship theft to transfer the ships, which are to be rebel reinforcements, to the rebels without arousing suspicion against her and the others in the Alderaanian Senate delegation. So Ezra and Kanan go to the Imperial Depot and disguise themselves as stormtroopers, where they make contact with Leia, who knows who they are. However, Lieutenant List, who is sort of the Imperial in charge, he puts magnetic clamps. He puts magnetic clamps on the Alderaanian transports, which was unexpected and foils the rebels' initial plan to easily make off with the ships. Now, Leia, Kanan, and Ezra make their way out into the countryside of Lothal, purportedly on a mission for scouting a location for refugee settlement. But they find a transport where Ryder Azadi and Chopper have been captured. So Ezra and Kanan undertake a bit of a rescue mission, and the Ghost shows up at just the right moment, with the three, or rather Leia and the two Ezra and Kanan disguised as stormtroopers being quote-unquote kidnapped by Zeb and taken onto the Ghost, where they have to concoct a new plan. To save the ships from just actually being taken by the Empire. So the Phantom flies back to the Imperial Depot, and Leia walks out once again with Ezra and Kanan, saying that these two brave stormtroopers saved her from the rebels, no thanks to the incompetence of Yogar List, of course, making him squirm and sputter as he does throughout this episode. The rest of the rebels use this opportunity to start unlocking the magnetic clamps on the three cruisers, and after a lot of fighting and the Ghost flying around and blowing up plenty of AT-AT walkers, Leia is able to Leia sees the rebels successfully get all three ships off of the planet, and she is not implicated in the plot whatsoever. And finally, in the Protector of Concord Dawn, the rebels once again are looking for new routes to meet up with one another and carry out their operations, as the Empire is once again cracking down on the Lothal sector. Sabine says that she knows of a possible passage through another system, the Concord Dawn system, but of course that is under the protection of the Mandalorian Protectors of Concord Dawn, a legendary group of feared warriors. So the rebels, headed up by Hera and a squad of A-Wings, they go to Concord Dawn to try and strike a peace bargain or an alliance with the Protectors in order to allow the rebels safe passage through this system, which they need for their operations. However, Fen Rao, who is the leader of the Protectors, and the Protectors do not take kindly to this, and they decimate the rebel squadron, and Hera is gravely wounded, barely making it out alive. Sabine and the other rebels are furious and want to go back and take their revenge, but Kanan says that this is something he has to do alone, and he goes back on the Phantom, and we find out that his actual plan is to try and make one last ditch effort to strike a bargain with Fen Rao and the Protectors, having snuck his way onto the planet's surface alone. However, Sabine stows away with him, and she of course just wants to blow everything up. So Kanan makes it in and talks to Fen Rao. However, Sabine is apprehended. A massive fight breaks out. Sabine blows up all of the Conquer Dawn fighters, but Kanan manages to, after a crazy sequence where he is on the outside of the starfighter hurling through the upper atmosphere, he manages to capture Fen Rao and take him back to the rebel ship, ensuring that in exchange for his safety, the rebels get safe passage through the Conquer Dawn system. Eli, I cannot hear you.
Damn it, my mic was muted. All right, that's a lot to get to. We got three very jam-packed. There we go. I was looking for the word. Jam-packed episodes of Star Wars television today. let's talk about Legacy first.
Oh yeah, this is a real good one.
Which I would think, I think is probably the most emotional of the episodes in the episode itself. We'll talk about emotions with these episodes in a meta way, because I think the most emotional episode of these three is not this one, but again, we'll talk about exactly the reasons why I think it might be another one. But even so, this is an episode where ever since, again, I forgot that one of my notes was I forgot how directly this connected back to Gathering Forces. Sibo knows what happened to Ezra Bridger's parents. I thought they kind of might have just abandoned that thread. Or like alluded to it maybe in this, but no, but this directly connects to, and this is something that I think when this series started, the series creators, your Daves, your Greg Wisemans, your Simon Kinbergs, knew in the back of their minds that they had to cover at some point.
Yeah.
You're setting up this thing with Ezra, orphan, parents disappeared by the Empire. You have to, at some point, figure out what the fuck's happened to them.
Yeah, it's a vital part of no doubt, it's a vital part of the story.
And I think that this is such an interesting episode because in allowing Ezra to learn and then to move on, you kind of push the show into a new stratosphere where you can stop worrying about it now.
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of it's in the first two seasons, at least until the very end of season 2, this is maybe not the defining challenge because it's only the focus of a little bit of the show, but this is this is for him by far the greatest challenge and the greatest weight on his shoulders that we see, and him in this episode having to accept what happened to his parents, and in doing so with Kanan by his side, and what that sort of the implications for their relationship of sort of going through that together.
Very quickly,
that really pushes him to new heights.
Very quickly, I will just say, and this comes in line with all three of these, I thought all three of these cut titles for these episodes were great. They were all stupendous. I think this one actually, ironically, is the weakest one, and that's even saying something because I think this one's very good. But the vision, cut to Kanan, I saw my parents, cut to title card. Yeah. That's good. That's really, really good.
Yeah.
It immediately sets up the stakes. So the episode is really, really good.
Yeah, that just sticks in my mind. The way that he says, "I saw my parents," and I mean, it goes without saying.
It follows up on
means to him, but like,
who is it? Who is it? I think it was Galtravis. Kanan, I think he knew my parents in Vision of Hope. We follow up on that, which I think is really effective.
Yeah, and the episodes where Kanan's parent or where Ezra's parents are involved, even in a smaller way, like the Galtravis episode, those are the episodes where we see an intensity from Ezra and an earnestness to him that we don't necessarily see very much in these first couple of seasons. Seeing how he deals with that, that's especially compelling, I think.
And we'll see that intensity and earnestness shift now after this. And we'll see exactly how it shifts. And I'm going to aggressively push. I've been aggressively foreshadowing the point I'm really going to make with this episode, which is immediately at when Hera and Kanan are showing him their progress. We called in every favor with every smuggler, trade, and pirate that we know. I think that's traitor. I spelled it trade said trade in my notes. The smuggler, trader, and pirate that we know. Even asked Senator Organa to inquire with his sources, but we couldn't find them. I'm sorry. This is the sentiment that's needed for Ezra to make an incredibly crushing yet still important conclusion that he does make at the end of this episode. And I feel like a part of him is already made. Mira and Ephraim Bridger are gone, and that's horrible. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's horrible that they are gone. However, if there was a group of people that were to help Ezra move on from that, I can think of no better group than Hera Syndulla, Kanan Jarrus, Gara Zebarellius, Sabine Wren, and Chopper.
Yeah, and I think in a
Ezra's found his new family. It will never be what it once was having his parents. And
Yeah.
I never want anybody to think I'm making that comparison. However, found family is at the heart of this show, and this episode explores what it means for Ezra more than anything else, and how important it was that the Ghost Crew came into his life when they did.
Yeah, and the fact that they supported him, as fervently and as unconditionally as they did throughout this journey of trying to find his parents, that only reinforces their own bond with Ezra as sort of semi parental like figures in his lifetimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm gonna say, yeah. But the shot, before we even go anywhere, that shot of Ezra, Kanan, and Hera looking somberly at all of those holographic planetoids just in silence, it's breathtaking. It's just beautiful. It's breathtaking.
Yeah, absolutely.
It really gets to you. It gets to the like you can only imagine. You could probably imagine some of what Ezra's thinking and feeling. The interesting thing is imagining what Hera and Kanan are thinking, where it's like, yeah, you told the kid what you were trying to do, but you fell short for him, and you fell short for him on the one thing that he's wanted.
Yeah.
Since they left when he was 7.
Yeah, the very most.
When he was 8. Yeah, and then we hear there's a massive escape, and the pressure mounts. Meanwhile, of course, they're planning the Imperial invasion of Garel, but we'll get to that when we get to that. I will say, the next thing I have in my notes, and I think it's true, is we obviously didn't know about this mantra at the time. It would come out in a film that would be released at the end of the year that this was, or actually, maybe this was 2015. I don't know if it was late 2015, early 2016. Anyway, this film the film that would premiere this phrase would release at the end of 2016, so it's not really like there wasn't any way for them to really practically put it in. But if Kanan and Ezra were searching the database with the Force, and I had just heard, I'm one with the Force and the Force is with me, I'm one with the Force and the Force with me, that would have made the sequence like 25% cooler.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, they find X10, which actually I just realized X10 is very funny because if any of X is the Roman numeral that is 10 in the Roman alphabet, which is very funny.
Prisoner 1010. Yeah. Yeah. I think as well in the vision sequence and his intuition, it's also sort of it's if we to frame this episode through Ezra's development specifically, we have all these sort of harbingers of his growing power and his growing strength and attunement with the Force. And I think that we see that with his visions and how sort of strongly he feels and intuits what's happening. And then I think to cap that all off, in many ways, I think him losing and having to let go of his parents in this episode, like you said, that kind of spurs the next chapter of his development as a Jedi and his journey as
and
a Jedi.
To me, no, but you could divide the show up into many lines. Obviously, the seasons are great dividers themselves, but there is this show pre-Legacy and post-Legacy. Like, it is a different show after this. Not drastically or anything like that, but there are different ideas explored with, especially our main character, because in this regard, he does have nothing left to lose. Obviously, he has his new family left to lose, but with his old family, there's nothing left there. Right? Right?
Yeah.
There's nothing left there.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's not worry about that.
We got a minute before we have to worry about that. I'll say that much. Although you're right to foreshadow somewhat. I do think that despite he hasn't all the way, obviously he has not all the way like let go of that can you ever fully? I'm not.
Yeah.
One wonders, but I think that in a way this is a little bit of his. It's a little bit of his I have nothing left to fear moment, like Kanan's in season 1, where it sort of forces him into a moment of trying to let go of attachment, like the Jedi of old emphasized so much in the old Jedi Order.
Yeah, but before we get there, of course, we have. I just want to, and I'm not trying to cut you off there. I'm just
No,
like
it's fine.
this important part of the episode, which is, of course, the Empire does invade Lothal. Well, Ezra, if you want to go back to Lothal, now would be the time. And I want to put a pin in the whole idea of like nothing left to lose, just to say, for very quickly, that I think the idea of the juxtaposition of leaving Garel and the Ezra's family thing
Yeah.
is not something that you just do. Like, either one of them could take an episode and be done very wrongly, but they managed to get both done effectively in one episode and have it be a great episode. Like, that's no small feat. Like, that's impressive. There's so much the writing does in this episode. The writing does in these episodes. That's like the writing of these episodes. I think all three of them is superb. Henry Gilroy is legacy. I know
Yeah.
Stephen Melching is Princess on Lothal. Protector of Concord Dawn is Gilroy and Kevin Hops. Incredible writing on all three of these episodes, in my opinion. But so we have, right before Ezra has nothing to lose, of course, he has everything to lose with his parents. So that's him with Callus, and him with, and then later with 7 and 5. You mentioned before in your summary, and that the sequence with Ezra and Callus, lightsaber blaster just zooming in closer to each other. And you can tell, like, this is, I believe, the closest Ezra's tapped into the dark, the most Ezra's tapped into the dark side of the Force throughout this entire series.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean,
even more than the one we all think about.
Yeah, I mean, this is the intensity that I was talking about. This is like the excitement and the desperation simultaneously at the prospect of finding his parents. It's so strong and palpable. And then when we see him identify the people, the Callus and the Inquisitors, who really are responsible for all the shitty things that have happened to him and his family being torn apart, we see that come out of him in a way that we haven't before. And it's sort of like everyone has their weakness in the, if we're thinking about the Jedi philosophy and the Jedi practice of sort of divorcing yourself from attachment, although that doesn't seem to be as much of Kanan's MO. So it's questionable how much he's teaching that to Ezra.
We'll see
think.
Actually,
but
exactly how much of that is Kanan's MO in the Protector of Concord Dawn, where I will admit, Kanan Jarrus, I will be giving a public apology to Kanan Jarrus for the Protector of Concord Dawn, because I totally thought he was going to go way more attachment based than he actually did. That guy impressed me in that episode.
He does some hard emotional work. I can't imagine kind of being as even keeled as he is in that episode. But yeah, regardless, I think, yeah, I'm thrilled by the entire sort of escape from Garel sequence, if we want to talk about that, since we're there. I mean, first of all, the sudden moment of realization from Sabine when Zeb says they haven't seen a patrol all morning, and of course Sabine, being an ex-Imperial insider at the Academy, she knows,
figures it out. Yeah,
she knows what that means. She says they're pulling back. That must mean a major attack. All of a sudden, boom, Star Destroyers in the atmosphere right over the city. It's
such Star Wars timing.
Yeah, it's such a good timing. Oh gosh, it's such a good moment. It's so exciting. And then, I mean, you just feel, I keep using this word intensity. You feel like, in such a visceral way, what the stakes are for Ezra when he goes after Callus in the hangar and delivers that massive sort of force push and just knocks him out with this crazy spin move. And when that just the the rawness in his voice when he says, "You're not getting in my way anymore," and starts charging the Inquisitors. Like he is
and
like
Kanan
he
has
kind
to
of
blast the door, and which I think
yeah
is such a great like technical moment of it's a
yeah
great character moment, and it's a great technical moment because first of all, I
yeah
love like that creative problem solving. Every time that anybody uses that like creative problem solving in Star Wars and stuff like that, like I
yeah
always love that stuff. That was something that I was actually hoping the Mandalorian would do a bit more. And the only reason I don't fault the Mandalorian for this for any other reason. I don't fault the Mandalorian for this. I fault it marketing for this because the first thing it showed us was the damn shot of the fucking of Din splitting the Quarren in half with the door, which I thought was like so cool and such an interesting and innovative use of Star Wars technology. And then they just don't really do much of that. Actually, I shouldn't say that. They do a little bit of that. Din takes out the people in the prison, the crewmates in the prisoner some interesting ways. He does some interesting stuff. Less than I was hoping. He does some stuff in the Sin, but like it was back when they were billing that series as a bounty hunter series and not what it ended up being.
yeah.
Which, on one hand, am I a little mad they build it like that? Yeah, but on the other hand, they got to drop the most brilliant twist in Star Wars since, I would argue, I Am Your Father to us in Grogu at the end of chapter 1, so I can't really complain
Yeah, that was a
that much.
stunning moment for sure.
My only problem with this battle, and this is not with a story or anything, this is just a character thing. People, why are you putting the most deadly member of your squadron with Kanan and Ezra to go find his parents? You have a mass murder bot. Use him to kill the imps. It's not hard, guys. Chopper is a stormtrooper machine. He's a stormtrooper killing machine, and you use him for one thing and one thing only, as two things. One, as an astromech, if you really have to in a ship, and two, to murder stormtroopers. It's not that hard. It really is not that hard.
Yeah, I mean, all of the jokes and the running bits and the memes aside, I feel like Chopper does it when he's sort of, yeah, he can be vindictive, but I don't know. I feel like he partakes in mass manslaughter, like sort of when he has to, which is like a weird, which is like a
right.
very weird. It's like a very weird thing to say, but if you look at the circumstances, it's sort of like
I think I treat Chopper like he's he's like sort of like a regular superhero, but where I feel like need to treat him like like people treat the Hulk, where you want Bruce Banner because he's a brilliant scientist.
Yeah.
Like Bruce Banner has his own capabilities and stuff like that. But when you want people to get beat up, you get them angry and you turn them into the Hulk.
Yeah.
That's Chopper. Chopper is good for a bunch of astromech droid purposes, but if you get him pissed enough, he will destroy a capital ship.
But he does that by doing astromech droid things. Like it's the same things that he's.
Yes, but it's
the things that he's doing.
He enters another mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
He's pesky at best when he's Chopper, but when he's the incredible C-110P, he is a full blown. He gets bloodlusted, as they say. But anyway, yeah, I think it was very heartbreaking that Hera and Zeb and Sabine weren't able to go with Kanan and Ezra, but I understand the reasons, both tactically, like in story, and also for story reasons to make the episode a little bit more intimate with Kanan and Ezra. Like, I understand that desire. You want to get on to Lothal, where we spend the next episode and a half?
Yeah, I mean, we make it off of the story makes it off of Garel in relatively short order. I am a big fan of the sort of all out the all-out charge of all the ships racing at once to try and get out, and the
Oh yeah, very Hoth-esque.
just
Yeah.
that sort of like desperate, like now or never, fucking make a break for it, find a way out, save who you can. I think it really underscores, obviously, the menace that the Empire continues to pose to Ezra and his new family, as well as to his originally family, and why emotionally it's so difficult for Ezra to sort of control his angriest impulses throughout this episode. Yeah, besides that, I mean,
I will say, and that's it for Garel.
yeah, and that's it for Grell. We get I like the moment at the wall after Kanan blasts the wall closed. He has that little conversation with Ezra, where Ezra kind of calms his own anger after lashing out at Kanan and saying, "You don't understand what it's like." Kanan says, "Yes, I don't understand what it's like.
I don't understand.
I never knew my parents, bro.
I never knew my parents." And then there's that really sweet moment as they're going to Lothal. It's too late for me, but maybe not for you.
Yeah.
And they let I said in my notes, I wish they let this moment breathe, but then they let it breathe later, which is honestly fine. I would have just let it all out in that moment, but that's a personal choice for me. The idea of like the dichotomy of Ezra understanding the importance of family because they were taken away from him, versus Kanan understanding the importance of family because he never really had one to begin with.
Yeah,
that's fascinating. Him investing in his surrogate son, the chance to reconnect with his biological parents who were so brutally taken from him at 7 years old is just really touching. And there's like it does feel like Kanan is giving Ezra the chance, is supporting Ezra every step along the way. Not that he wouldn't have, but by going with him, by accompanying with him so personally, is giving Ezra the chance to do what he never could.
Yeah, and I think it's especially beautiful because it's selfless. Like they know that they might lose Ezra, or not. They might lose a part of their family if Ezra does find his parents, and that changes his course in life and his decisions. But they're committed to doing right by him and doing the best thing for him, regardless, as they should be.
Yeah. But I imagine that even if Ezra's parents were alive, they wouldn't have lost him.
Yeah.
I think Ezra was in too deep. Plus, it's not like the Bridgers would even disapprove of what the Ghost Crew is doing.
That's true. Yeah, maybe maybe Miriam and Ephraim would have been the ones joining the Ghost Crew.
Maybe they would have been joined Phoenix Squad. Yeah.
If Ezra were able to find them in time. But anyways,
yeah.
On to Lothal.
Yeah.
Immediately we find that Ezra's old family home was razed by the Empire to send a message.
Which is just like, is maybe, and like, I think it is possibly the worst thing we've seen the Empire done in this series. Maybe not in terms of scale, but like in terms of like the most cruelty, it's up there. Like, there was no reason for them to do that. There wasn't. There was no reason for them to do that. No tactical reason, no advantage to them at all to do that. They did that because they wanted to, and they did that to make Ezra Bridger scared.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he realizes immediately, and it correctly assesses this is just a message not only to him, but to everyone, because they know that he's not. They know that he's not on Lothal anymore. Maybe
who knows when they did
maybe
this,
they didn't know. Maybe they didn't know at the point at which. Actually, yeah, that was a pretty. Whoever did that probably didn't know at that point when they raised the house. But that was also like. That was for all of Lothal. That was for all of Capital City. Everyone who knew whose house that was, or maybe knew something about the Bridgers. Maybe it's doubtful that they knew where they lived. That would be a big security risk for the Bridgers, as they obviously were speaking out against the Empire. But that was, yeah, it's sort of the once again the Empire, yeah, proving and sort of showing Ezra on the off chance that he comes back to Lothal.
Yeah,
it's on the off chance, like just saying this is sort of what we're willing to do.
Yeah, But let's go. I want to meet up with Prisoner X10, writer Azadi, voiced by the great Clancy Brown, and now played by the great Clancy Brown in episode 1 of Ahsoka, Master and Apprentice. He's another one. He's another one of the rare animation to live action complete transplants where they had the same person. Katie Sackhoff is obviously one of them. Lars Mikkelsen, obviously another one. I'm trying to think any other ones that I can think of. Corey Burton for voice in Book of Boba Fett technically is one of them. Yeah, it's really those three that I can think of. But yeah, no, Clancy Brown as Ryder Azadi, who I think is actually probably his best animation role. He doesn't have a lot of major animation roles. It's this and Savage Opress, and I will take Ryder Azadi over Savage Opress every day of the week and twice on Tongs days. So, yeah. I love that we get this introduction to Ryder, and Ryder gets to share the news. They're dead, aren't they? I'm sorry, son. They are. Even in prison, your parents would stand up for those who couldn't. Especially after they heard your message. Yes, that message. That message of rebellion you beamed out, it somehow made its way into the deepest dark of Imperial prisons. They were inspired by it, Ezra. They rallied others to rise up and break out. Dozens of us, rebels, sympathizers, are free, thanks to them.
I mean, you want to talk about hard-hitting moments. This episode, I mean, that's the moment where I was just like, man, I kind of glossed over this episode in my memory of Rebels from the first few times I watched it, but this just hit so hard for me this time for whatever reason. I think
it's incredible that something like one of the cardinal rules of storytelling is show don't tell.
Yeah.
Ryder tells us all this information, and it works beautifully.
Yeah. Because it's not about the parents, it's about Ezra. And it is
about Ezra. And it's there. I'm thinking of a bunch of different quotes. I'm thinking of when we're talking about legacy, we have to ask ourselves, as Alexander Hamilton did in that great Broadway show, legacy. What is a legacy? And they say in that show, it's planting seeds in a garden you'll never see. Which at the time, I remember when this episode came out, I mentioned in this quote in reference to Andor, when Luthen says, I burn my life to make a sunrise I know I'll never see. But it's equally applicable in this episode, where Mira and Ephraim did all they did. Well, they did all they did. That's the tragedy of it. But that's what I think this episode balances so well, is the tragedy and Star Wars does this just beautifully generally, the tragedy and the inspiration at the same time, which is that Ephraim and Mira risked their lives so that Ezra would not have to have this life. But now that he does, Ezra is doing what they've done, but building on it more and more and more. The other quote I was thinking of, the second quote I was thinking of was the idea of what was hope will always survive in those who continue to fight, which I didn't know exactly where that was from at the moment. That sounded like a Star Wars quote. When the ideas of that quote were formulating in my mind. It's from Fallen Order. It's Cordova and Jedi Fallen Order, and it's about, obviously, it's the darkest corners of the Imperial prisons. Nothing gets in there. We see in Andor, we see. And I'm not saying all Imperial penitentiaries are like the Narkina prisons, but if they're anything close to like the Narkina prisons, who are filled with folks in this time period, like Kino Loy and Cassian, who hadn't done really anything. Like, those were high security prisons for men and women and all sorts of folks who, like imagine what those prisons were like for dissidents.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it'll find a way. The message will find a way. Hope will find a way. Hope will always survive, and those who continue to fight. And that's what Ezra's parents did until the day they died, is help others and continue to fight. And Ryder said they did that until their dying breaths. And then the third quote is from Last Jedi. We are what they grow beyond, going in tangent with the Hamilton quote, where Ephraim and Mira are some of the were heroes. They helped warn people and against what the Empire was doing and help them escape even in their final days. And now it's Ezra's turn. And now it's Ezra's turn to become more. And he's not becoming more in spite of them. He's becoming more because of them. And that is and as Yoda says in the next line, that is the burden of all masters.
Yeah.
We'll see another character later in another episode struggle with the burden of growing between her two adoptive parents.
Yeah.
And becoming more than them, who, unbeknownst to her, will die in a few years anyway. Yeah, those are my thoughts on legacy in this episode. It's one of those things where I thought in this episode that legacy, like when I first watched this episode, I thought, oh, legacy is about Ezra's parents, because Ezra's parents are Ezra's legacy. It's where it's where his parents are, where he comes from, and this episode is forcing him to learn. No, this episode's about Ezra. This is Ezra's the legacy. Ezra is the one who is growing beyond even what his parents could. Ezra is the one carrying on the Bridger name and the Bridger ideals, even when his parents are no longer around to do so.
Yeah, and I think it's so very beautiful that he gets to sort of finally fully understand how, even with their dying breath and their dying actions, how they died, what they were doing, helping people escape Imperial prison, helping dissidents escape. He understands sort of the legacy. He fully understands the extent of the legacy that they left behind, and the legacy that they left for him, and obviously the way that he gets carried on, and the fact that as well his parents heard his broadcast. So it's going both ways, where he is even more.
Mira, I don't know what that boy's saying about Buffalo Wild Wings, but it inspires me.
I don't know. I knew you were gonna bring that up, but yeah, I think it goes both ways, because Ezra, just by knowing, I think we see what that. I mean, we see what that means to him, and we see him responding to and dealing with the realization that his parents are gone. And as heartbroken as he is, in the depth of his grief, we see him with gratitude and cognizance that they had some idea of what he was doing, and that he got to know what they were doing. And that, as difficult as an episode as this is, it's not, I think, for as sad as it is for Ezra, it's not a particularly difficult watch, not compared to some of the most heartbreaking moments of Rebels.
Oh, this isn't even even the biggest, most difficult episode. Wasn't the most difficult episode for me to watch this episode.
Yeah, I mean, I still think that, like, yeah, it's just, I don't know. I don't know how to. I don't know what to add here or how to break it down. This episode just felt so rounded and complete and beautiful in how it handled Ezra's, in how it handled the complexity of Ezra's experience and his emotions, and the delicate, I don't know, the delicate details of him going through that with Kanan and their rapport, and how that's growing and being strained and re-strengthened through this as well. It's just an episode that leaves you going, man.
Yeah.
I'll just
add.
Yeah.
I'll just add that I think that this episode wouldn't have worked as well if Taylor Gray hadn't put his all into this episode. I think this is a great episode for Taylor Gray. I think he acts acts his heart out as Ezra.
Oh,
I
yeah, it
think
goes
he
without saying.
really
Absolutely.
gets to a lot of the core of his emotions at that time, and I think this could have been an episode that could have been too emotional or too cheesy or even or something like that. No, but it's Taylor Gray who plays the straight and who really just puts a lot into it. Yeah, no, it's great. Henry Gilroy wrote a great episode. Taylor Gray is great. Freddie Prinze Jr. is great. Clancy Brown is great. It's so much. But let's get on to a more cheery episode, right? A more cheery episode.
Perhaps.
Instantly. And I'm already on the floor crying. God damn it.
I mean, I don't think
My
this is
God.
a particularly uncheerful episode. I feel like
No, it isn't. But this episode is in a meta way very bittersweet. So we might we pick up. We'll get there. We pick up right where we leave off. I just want to mention before we get there. Oh, we never got a to be continued at the end of Legacy. There might have as well have been one. Bale's agent is coming to Lothal with 3 cruisers. We had the Hammerheads straight from KOTOR.
Oh yeah,
we hear they're
and
from Alderaan.
This is before they pop up in. This is before they pop up in Rogue One, right? This dropped before Rogue One.
This was
do you think? Okay, do you think they coordinated that?
Yeah, I think.
Do you think there was some like that? I love it. I just put the pieces together. Like, what if one of these?
There's a whole bunch of coordination
from Rogue One.
There's a whole bunch of coordination that they do with Rebels. They did a whole bunch of coordination. For example, in Protector of Concord Dawn, which we'll talk about very soon, the comic where Fen Rao saves Kanan and Depa Billaba from the Separatists, like Kanan described in the episode, was released on the same day as the episode. So both stories, the one that Kanan mentions in the episode, and then the actual story itself, like of Protector of Concord Dawn, are released on the same day. Plus, having I believe it's the mid-season premiere of season 3, I believe it is, Ghosts of Geonosis, being the first episode to be released after Rogue One, and look, it has Saw Gerrera in it. Like, that's too much of a coincidence not to have been planned beforehand. No, Rebels did a lot of pre-planning. But anyway, Hammerheads, they're from Alderaan, and when you see that hair, you just know that it's her. This episode was a very good episode, I'd argue, when it came out. What makes this episode, in my opinion, such an A++ tier episode is the weird sort of post-mortem I feel like this episode acts as for Carrie Fisher. It was released before her death. It was. But it was less than a year. Obviously, Leia was not voiced by her. But there is such a... I can't exactly explain to you what it is, but there is a... Watching this episode after Carrie died, as I have, I think most of the times I've watched this episode, if not all of them, is just a different experience. Because there's this famous quote thing that Carrie said, and I heard about it. Where is it? Carrie said in an interview about Leia, she's me and I'm her, and it's kind of a Mobius strip. I carry her around, and I know her better than anybody else, and we wear the same clothes a lot of time. She's mine. And so for me, to talk about Carrie Fisher and to talk about Leia are essentially to talk about the same thing in a lot of ways. And I know that Carrie was more than Leia. I'm not trying to say that Carrie was not more than Leia. She had other film roles, other parts of her life. She struggled with a lot of mental health stuff in her life, obviously, but there's a part of me that does connect it to Carrie. And I remember how devastated the fandom was the day we lost Carrie Fisher. She hadn't completed all, I found out recently that obviously she had completed all of her recording for her shooting for Last Jedi. And of course they shoehorned her in with some very impressive CGI in Rise of Skywalker, which was incredibly impressive at the time. I didn't realize that they hadn't completed her ADR for The Last Jedi. So they had to make some adjust. Like they had to really do some work there to make everything fit because she hadn't completed her ADR when she passed away. Which, for those of you who don't know what ADR is, it is when if you need to sub in vocals. This has been done in modern filmmaking for a long time. If you need sub in, like if somebody says a line and something goes on in the background, or it just doesn't send the right way at the time, or something like that, you will have people go into a recording booth and record their lines over again. It happens all the time. It's a common process of the production and the post production to make sure that everything runs smoothly. And Carrie had not completed that by the time she passed away for The Last Jedi, so they had to get creative there. But yeah, to hear the theme in full swell, to see Carrie, to not to see Carrie, see, this is what I'm talking about. To see Leia, to have this wonderful script written by Stephen Melching. My God, I don't know if Stephen Melching spent any time with Carrie Fisher at all, but I feel like before this episode, all he did, like he had like a 2-hour-long conversation with Carrie Fisher. I really do. The way that he nails her dialogue is like honestly needs to be studied. It's so incredibly impressive to me. Just from the instant, I know who you are, and unless you want the deck officer to know too, I suggest you put your helmets back on and keep your mouth shut.
Banger, yeah.
Can you not hear Carrie saying that in the original film? Like that is such it is deeply impressive to me how Leia is done in this episode. In an episode that could have totally messed her up.
Yeah, I think especially for someone, I mean, for all of the iconic original trilogy characters, it's a challenge to take the next step, whether that's having an actor play them as a younger version of themselves, like Alden Ehrenreich for Han Solo, which for the flack that he gets in that movie, I think he did a pretty darn good job.
I loved Alden as Han, and I think those are the two.
He did a good job.
And I think those are the two.
Yeah.
I think those are the two OT characters that are hardest to get right. I think it's Han and Leia.
And then whether it's, I mean, it's like the CGI and everything for Luke in The Mandalorian. I think that it's a big risk, especially when this is a kids TV show. The budget, time constraints, resources that this show's production had access to was so much less than Solo or The Mandalorian. And I think that they did a very, very good job. And I think it's especially challenging, like you were saying earlier, the level to which Carrie Fisher embraced Leia as a character, and the level to which the fans in the community kind of saw her in Leia, and then Leia and Carrie, like you said, this deep sort of mutualism between the actor, the actress, and the character. That is an especially tall order, and I think they did as good of a job as you can reasonably expect, I think, for a show like Rebels. I agree.
Yeah, and there's and the other thing I will say, I will just quickly mention the cut to title just because this is Princess Leia Organa. I look forward to it, Lieutenant. End transmission. Yeah. Well, there's no turning back now. Perfect.
Also,
I was literally like, I shed actual tears watching the beginning of this episode because it's just so perfect.
And she's at 15 in this episode, right? 16.
That's the thing.
16.
That's the genius part of this episode. Ezra and her, it's not just they're the same age. No. Ezra is 1 day older than Leia is. They're different because we know this. We know that Ezra is 1 day older than Luke and Leia. Yeah. We knew this initially from when we found out Empire Day was the day he was born, because Luke and Leia were born the day after, because they had, because remember, we had to go through all the thing from the Declaration of the Empire to Polis Massa. And we knew that was a possibility, but now to see these people who are literally 1 day apart, and who the founding of the Empire was so significant to their lives when they were born in ways could not imagine it. And that's, what's one of the big things of the episode is that these young folks have had to grow up so fast.
Yeah.
But she is far more composed and put together, I would argue, than he is at this point, despite actually never knowing who her parents are and not knowing for a good many, many years. And yes, she has had a much easier life than Ezra up to this point, but she still chose to get involved in the rebellion when she didn't have to. And yes, of course, part of why she had to grow up so fast is because of societal expectations around women and specifically royalty, as Leia and Carrie Fisher both were of different persuasions, but they both carried it so gracefully. There's the contrast between, like, this Ezra, this episode. Obviously, I'm never going to take this episode away from Leia, but Ezra is the secondary character of this episode. The reason why Leia works so well, and in this episode, is and there are two reasons. One is because she's Leia and she's written great, and two is as a contrast to where Ezra is at this moment. Ezra doesn't know what's next for him. His parents are dead. That's it. Game over in that regard. But
yeah, he's sort of looking.
There's a conversation we'll see them have very soon of how do you keep going, of how do you keep fighting when everything seems bleak, and when you want somebody to have a discussion with in the Star Wars universe about how to fight on when things seem the bleakest. There is nobody more qualified in that department than Leia Organa. Like, that's her character. That's literally who Leia is. Yeah. I've been yapping. I deeply adore this episode. Probably one of my favorites of the season. Behind probably this is only behind Twilight Apprentice in terms of maybe Shroud of Darkness, but I probably think it even beats out Shroud of Darkness at the end of the day.
You hold it in really, really high regard. I think it's a great episode. Not as huge on it as you are, but yeah, I mean, it's got everything. I think. Yeah, I think seeing someone like Leia, who is so obviously sort of, she is wise and has stepped up so far beyond her years because she's chosen to, and also because it has been asked of her. So much has been asked of her as like a young teenager to be in the Senate, part of a delegation, doing these missions, everything that she's doing. I think it's interesting to see her and Ezra and their rapport and her talking to Ezra about his loss. I liked that.
It's really touching, and I want to get to that a little bit later. I also just wanted to, there's so much. I also want to applaud Julie Dolan in this episode. I think she does a really great job as Leia. She's voiced Leia in a few other areas, but for being decades older than Leia is in this episode, it's incredible how much she can sound like a young Leia. Like, it's truly incredible to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a line where Leia's talking to List, and she said, "That is hardly necessary." And that line, the way she says it, is just like, I think I just might have heard Carrie saying that line.
Yeah, I think the way that this version of Leia the way she commands presence and respect and power is very reminiscent of Carrie Fisher and her.
Oh yeah, no, it is. There's
the years.
Absolutely. Your Highness, as my ships are detained, I will fire your shuttle to begin my work.
Yeah.
There's just so many of those lines that's just like, yeah, that's Leia. That's Leia right there. We're seeing this right there. My thing with this episode that I think, if you could point out the one flaw in this episode, it is that maybe the Imperials are a little too cartoony in this episode. Like, you could argue that they're a little too stupid in this episode, but I would also argue that it's a Leia episode, so screw that. and B, they're only as stupid as Leia and the rebels are making them.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so much with this episode that we could go on and on with. Of course, we got to go back to the beginning. Good, then you can steal my ships. What? And the plan is crazy, but you can see how Leia came up with it. The idea of, well, we can't just give you these ships. The Empire's searching everywhere for for rebel sympathizers, and that'll have major implications for the House of Alderaan. So what we can instead do is leave these ships conveniently unattended and then have you steal them. That way, no harm, no foul for either of us. You keep on doing your rebel stuff, and we keep on looking innocent, even though we're not. And yeah, the play acting in this episode is a little bit cartoony. I will admit that, yes, but I don't care. There's a point where which I don't care. Do we want to get into Ezra and Leia talking, or do we want to? Do you have anything before Ezra and Leia
think
talking?
We should. I do have to say, this is very unfortunate. I just found out I have to leave at 5, much earlier than I thought I did. So maybe I don't know if we're going to be able to get through everything.
Hello.
Still this whole episode. This is one of the rare times that we see Ezra kind of process his parents and process his sort of place in the galaxy. That's not one of the like Ezra's parents episode mark in big kind of capital letters. So I think that's.
I will say
that alone makes this kind of a very, very interesting opportunity to get more of a glimpse.
I will say that there's one line in this episode that I wish was cut. It's the brief conversation between Kanan and Leia before she goes in. Is he all right? He's okay. He just lost some people close to him. It's a challenge being his age with so much responsibility. I know that feeling. Maybe he could use a friend. I wish maybe he could use a friend was cut. Because I don't like the idea that... Because I think it'd be much more powerful if Kanan doesn't have to suggest it. If Leia goes in, because that's who Leia is. Leia wouldn't need that. Leia has that empathy within her. That is the Leia I feel like I know, who talks to every private or captain or whatever the rank like they're an equal. This
is also season 2 of a kids show airing on Disney XD.
You're right.
I think that's one of the moments when we're kind of like
where we have to face the format.
I agree with you to some extent. I also think.
Yeah, no, I get your idea, but
Filoni, the Dave Filoni animated shows really know how to. They really know how to play to their audience and to play way above. How to play up to sort of every audience above that in age, but they also know their audience at the end of the
day. They also do know their audience.
I'll say that much about this.
You're absolutely right, but I still do think that even just that line out would have made the episode like even that much better. And this is still, I love this. Look, and I'm gonna say this: is it ridiculous that Leia comforted Luke about Obi-Wan's death just after she was forced to watch Alderaan be destroyed? Yes, it is. I'm never going to defend that. However, that radical empathy from Leia, and it's not just there, in everywhere in her stories. As Ken Napstock has talked about on Force Center a lot, I think, or maybe it was Ken, maybe it was just Grimshaw, I don't know. One of them, her going up to Wicked in Return of the Jedi, offering him some food, that wins the war. That act wins the war. And it's because of Leia's radical empathy.
Yeah.
But yeah. Do you ever wonder, hey, but I'm still here. But you're a princess. You don't have to risk your life doing this. I feel like because I can fight, I have to for those who cannot. And I think you might be the same way. Perfect dialogue. No notes. Literally no notes. fucking perfect. Love that. Everything about that just encapsulates who these two are as individuals, and of course the power that Leia has to bring out the good she sees in other people. There's with that, all that with the theme playing in the background. Just my God, this is just perfect. I feel like I can't even articulate this episode very well, just because I deeply just so vibe with how it's presenting itself. Where Leia is the chief example of using her privilege. She uses her privilege to help those who cannot help themselves, and that's the goal of the rebellion. The only reason I say that Hera is one of the perfect rebel leaders at this time is because Leia is still 16. Like, there's a reason why Leia, like, this is the reason why I'd say around, probably she gets here probably around between New Hope and Empire, of her, like, starting to, like, really, or prime of really becoming a rebel leader. And then, of course, she creates the resistance from scratch. Like, that was one of the things that so struck me. Like, Leia was a high-ranking official in the rebellion immediately, even from the time we saw her in Rebels. But for larger standpoint, from the time we saw her in A New Hope. No. With her own two hands, Leia creates the resistance and saves the galaxy from a second reign of Palpatine. That's her.
Yeah.
When Ben Solo turns back to the light side in The Rise of Skywalker,
Yeah.
who is immediately to blame for Palpatine? The Princess of Alderaan has spoiled my plans. That's Leia. This episode, that's why I think why this episode is so much more powerful after Carrie Fisher's death, is because it's a love letter to Leia, and insofar as it is that, it is also a love letter to Carrie Fisher. And that conversation with her and Ezra is the pinnacle, is the heart of this episode. Yes, she can use the Force, and she's a crack shot with a blaster pistol, but her greatest weapon is how she carries herself, and how she, no pun intended, and how she inspires people to believe in themselves even when no one else does. Yeah. Immediately after, she walks out to the Ghost Crew. People far more experienced than her in this, in how they do things. I know you need these ships, so don't tell me why we can't get them. Tell me how we will. Like, yes. Just absolutely yes. Yeah.
I think we see her sort of growth with the plan not working, and her figuring out, with help from the others, an alternative. We also see in that moment specifically sort of just the weight that's on her. I feel like watching this episode, I almost wonder if it almost feels like they were going for the Leia that we get is almost more like a New Hope or even Empire Strikes Back Leia. And it's sort of, it's with everything, how she comes out swinging in this episode, obviously doing everything that she does. It's sort of like, wait, she's supposed to be how old? But obviously that's kind of who she is. She's always been someone who's sort of
But
chosen,
then
and
look
also
at
had
7
it
years
asked
ago
of her.
before this. Look at 7
she's
years
always,
before this with Obi-Wan Kenobi. This is how she always was.
Yeah, she's always chosen and had it asked of her to be doing things far, far, far beyond her years.
I actually will ask you this quickly before we have to. I know we have to wrap up soon for this. What is this episode like, having read Princess of Alderaan? Because you have and I haven't.
You've not read Princess of Alderaan?
No, I haven't.
Wow, I highly recommend it. I mean, it's a great book. And I actually was at Star Wars Celebration 2022. I was lucky enough to, there was some kind of table book signing event or something. I was lucky enough to chat with Claudia Gray, the author, for a couple of minutes, and I asked her kind of what writing this book was like, for such an iconic character, especially coming on the heels of Carrie Fisher's passing. And she said that when Carrie Fisher passed away, she sat down and sort of rewrote a lot of the book and really thought about how to make it as much of a tribute to Carrie Fisher's Leia and to Leia. And I think that really does come through in the book. I think that is a version of Leia where she's the narrator, it's from her perspective. We see so much uncertainty and we see like the full spectrum of what she's dealing with, how she's growing through the challenges, the uncertainties, the insecurities, the fears, the doubts about herself and in her own life. And I think that it just gives so much more weight to how much of a boss and a hero she is, and how much she steps up throughout all of her appearances in the saga and in Rebels. So I would say that it definitely enhances the experience, and it's just a darn good book on its own. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, it's on my list, absolutely. But I want to ask that the other part of this episode that we got to talk about is Ryder Azadi's turn to helping the rebels, which I would argue also is inspired by Leia. But the realization that the fight's not over yet for him, I think, is really inspiring. That even after, I understand after breaking out from fucking prison for doing one of the loudest bits of speaking against the Empire on Lothal, that is of course called treason, next to the Bridgers. I agree that's got to take a lot out of you, but that by the end of the episode he's ready to fight again. Magical. Yeah. It's the spirit of the show.
Yeah, and I mean it's the over and over throughout the show we just see the power of one sacrifice or one act of selflessness or one act of bravery or altruism. We see the power of one act to spark hope and rekindle hope when there is hopelessness in other people. And that really comes through in this episode.
Yeah. So and of course they get the ships. Two last things for this episode for me. Number one, that moment of Ryder figuring out that Kanan is a Jedi. He's a Jedi with the lightsaber and stuff like that, followed by the great image of an albeit into the sky stormtrooper carrying a lightsaber, which we had only really seen in the New Hope concept art. Both very cool. The fact that in an episode with Princess freaking Leia, oh my god, the Jedi moment still gets a major pop after all this time. And stormtrooper with lightsaber, very cool. And the other thing, I'd like to read you an excerpt from the Rebel Files right here, which I have right here, which is very important, I think. Give me a second. This is a letter from Moff Statata. There's a member to Moff Statata of the Lothal sector from the Imperial Senator Leia Organa of the Princess Royal House of Alderaan concerning gross dereliction of duty. Governor, I am lodging a formal complaint against the Imperial administration on Lothal. I recently arrived at the capital on a Senate-sponsored relief mission, bringing 3 ships fully laden with supplies. I repeatedly warned the port commander about ship theft, having been the victim of rebel raids in the past. Let me state once more, I could not have made my concerns any clearer. Yet, despite a landing shackle lockdown and the presence of 2 patrolling AT-ATs, vile thieves made off with all 3 ships within hours of my arrival. I demand full Imperial compensation. If this matter is not resolved with the swiftness it deserves, I shall take things up with the Senate. And she attaches an invoice with the cost of the corvettes and the cargo.
What page is that? Just so I know, I want to find that.
18. It's page 18.
I can't believe this.
And totaling up to just over just under 2.25 million credits. And Leia then says in her notes, they paid. Always try everything on the off chance it will actually work. So the Empire just gave the rebellion 2 million credits for nothing, basically.
Yeah.
This is why Leia is awesome. This is why Leia is awesome. This is it. That's it. She just stole the ships from herself and then got the Empire to pay 2 million credits for it.
Yeah. I love it.
What?
I love it. I love the tie-in. It's brilliant.
Thank you, Rebel Files, for that one. Very good book. I love those books. They're fantastic. Rebel Files is the only one that's actually canon. Yeah, but A Princess on Lothal is a lovely episode, an incredible tribute to Carrie Fisher and, of course, the character of Leia Organa, just as a whole. On to the Protector of Concord Dawn. So, we begin this episode with the rebels in deep space. They're in deep space where they will be for a lot of this season because they don't know what the hell to do. This is honestly like and even once they get a new base at the end of the season, like these parts of Rebels where they're like just kind of trying to figure out what to do, a little Battlestar Galactica-esque sort of thing of like
the cat and mouse game with the Empire.
Where do we run kind of now sort of thing. And just exploring the galaxy, as I've always talked about, is extremely thrilling. And we get into yet another very important subplot of this show, which is our Mandalorian subplot of this show. We did the Mandalorian subplot in the Clone Wars, and we're doing the Mandalorian subplots in Rebels right now. And we're introduced to another Mandalorian group called the Protectors, who immediately attack the Ghost Crew once they're in their space.
They waste no time.
The cut to title sequence of this episode may be my favorite we've gotten of the show so far, because it's in the middle of the fight that we cut to the title card. It's that intense. We are already in the middle of a fight with people who we don't really know what their whole deal is. But I really like, automatically, even before we get there, we get some more rebel politicking, which I think is very cool.
Yeah.
Sato and Sabine advocate for a more aggressive approach against the Protectors, while Hera and Kanan want to move in a more diplomatic manner. And herein lies another gap between the rebels and something they have to think about as they expand their movement more and more and more. How much of their movement is a military movement and how much of their movement is a political movement? The reason that Mon Mothma, give me a second. The reason that Mon Mothma ends up joining the Rebel Alliance, spoiler, a little bit for Andor Season 2, but nothing you didn't already know already of the broad strokes. I'm not going to get into any details.
Okay,
but was because she realized that only moving as a political alliance within the Empire was no longer feasible. The system had to be taken down entirely in order for any progress to be made and for galactic citizens to be saved. That being said, we'll get to this in season 4, but there's a line that Saw says about like the Empire consider us both terrorists. At least I act like one.
Yeah.
And while there's a whole bunch of stuff to unpack there that we will unpack in that episode, which is called In the Name of the Rebellion, which is the very beginning of season 4. What I think is important is that people like Saw and Luthen don't intend on seeing the after. Luthen even says, "I burn my life to make a sunrise I know I'll never see." In Andor, and I won't spoil to you what happens in Andor, but I think you can put 2 and 2 together, and when I say he intends to keep that promise.
Yeah.
Hera and the more and people on her side of revolutionaries, people like Leia and people like Mothma and all those folks do intend to see the other side of the war. That's what they're fighting it for.
Yes.
And so these political alliances, while they may not make sense from a military perspective, although even then Hera does argue very successfully, I might add, that in order to defeat the Empire, we'll need all types from all over. But even so, like, the political cannot be ignored, I guess is what I'm trying to say. The political cannot be ignored, and I don't think it should be ignored. Like, I think that Saw, and Luthen kind of even says this to Saw in season 1 of Andor himself about Anto Krieger. Luthen's like, look, man, at some point you're going to have to ally with somebody to take on the Empire. I know you don't like it. I know you think that, as you'll say later, you're the only one with clarity of purpose, but you're not. There are others with the clarity of purpose like you.
Yeah.
You just need to see it.
And how do you see this? How do you see this pertaining to Ben Rao and the Protectors?
Well, that's what Hera as Kanan is continually reaching out because he knows that the allyship between the Protectors and the Empire is fragile. He just doesn't know how yet. Because and I'll say I'm gonna commend Kanan Jarrus a lot in this episode. Because I totally thought when he snuck away, like when he was going away by himself to take back on the Protectors, I totally thought he was going scorched earth. I thought he was going to try and burn the Protectors facility to the ground. And I thought his little adage...
He absolutely could have.
I thought his little adage about keeping the peace and all that kind of stuff was him trying to convince himself otherwise. But no, that was actually what he was doing. Even though they nearly almost killed his girlfriend, he actually did want to lead a peacekeeping mission, which I think is a massive testament to the kind of person that Kanan has become, especially since Ezra and Hera have convinced him what his status as a Jedi means to people.
I mean, I think he of all people knows the dire consequences of warfare and of resorting to violence, and he's seen that more than anyone else in the Ghost crew. So it does make sense, and also who he is as a man, as a character. It makes perfect sense that it would be him, and it is very impressive for him as a Jedi to continue to hold strong and hold that tack even when Hera is mortally wounded.
Yeah, no, it's incredibly impressive on Kanan's part what he does this episode, and I'm honestly surprised that it wasn't him trying. That was the more vengeful one. I mean, it makes more sense as Sabine in this case because of the connection with her culture. But if there had been any other society in this episode that attacked them, any other organization that attacked them, this would have been like Sabine's role would have been Kanan. I'm pretty convinced.
Yeah, well, I think for Sabine, it's also her relationship with Hera is different than Kanan's, obviously, where she more recently obviously has had the experiences of trying to prove to Hera that she is a trustworthy teammate, family member, partner, not in that sense, but partner in crime, so to speak. And I think for her it is very, very difficult then she feels like it happened on her watch, and that's why we saw how badly she didn't want to leave Hera behind, as anyone wouldn't want to leave behind a family member almost. I think that as well as the cultural connection is sort of why this for her is so charged. Like think back to Out of Darkness. Yeah. That's what this is sort of the worst for her. This is the worst case scenario. This is the worst case outcome of getting the trust that she so badly wanted from Hera.
Absolutely. Moving on, I just want to talk about some fun Easter eggs, I think, in this show that I think is interesting. I want to talk about the relationship between Star Wars Rebels and the HBO show Rome. Jacob almost certainly has no idea where I'm going.
I have no idea where you're going with this, genuinely.
All of the major Mandalorians introduced in the show are voiced by actors from the HBO show Rome. Prominent actors from the HBO show Rome. This is a fact that was informed to me, that I was informed by past In a Galaxy guest, a friend of the show, Nikki Kumar, who had seen this pattern. Fen Rao is voiced by Kevin McKidd, who is the protagonist, who plays the protagonist of Rome. His co-star in that show is Ray Stevenson, who you may know from playing Baylan Skoll in Ahsoka, but also plays Rau's arch nemesis in this show, Gar Saxon.
Okay.
In addition to that, Saxon's brother, Tiber Saxon, is voiced by Tobias Menzies, who also played a character on Rome. All of the Mandalorians in this show, all of the Mandalorians introduced for this show, not the Wren family, but like all the other ones, all three of them were voiced by actors who had leads in HBO's Rome. And if you look at Roman society and Mandalorian society, you can see some like commonalities. There's a lot of honor, there's a lot of pride via fighting. I'm not saying that Rome and Mandalore are the exact same, but there are some decent parallels. In addition, I found out while researching, because I was like, I wonder if anybody else from Star Wars had been in Rome, that show. Yes, quite a few. Guy Henry, who plays Grand Moff Tarkin in Rogue One, who is Indira Varma, who plays Tala in Obi-Wan Kenobi, Catherine Hunter, who plays Edie Karn in Andor, and Carrie Condon, who plays, wow, I'm forgetting her name. She's the mother of Fern, that won't mean anything to you, who plays Fern's mom in, I think her name is, I forget, in Skeleton Crew. Let's see. Her name is Farah. I was going to say Fala, but Farah in Skeleton Crew. So yeah, I thought that was very cool. But yeah, no, I think I love what Kevin McKidd does in this episode and other episodes. I think he makes Fen Rau into one of the most interesting and complex side characters. Yeah, I really like Fen Rau. Also, of course, he is voiced after Brad. He is named after Brad Rau, who is an infamous director and writer on Clone Wars and Rebels, and I believe supervising director on The Bad Batch. Yeah, no, a talented guy, and yeah, the character's named after him. But either way, let's go back to the episode. Do you have anything else before Kanan and Sabine decide to go back or not?
Not really, no. I mean, I think we have obviously the confrontation and we have the dog fight. But I think where it really gets interesting is where we see Kanan and Sabine go off and how they're both we contrast. We see the contrast in how they're dealing with this, not loss, because they know that she's going to be okay. Pretty much immediately, we know that Hera's going to be okay. But regardless, I think for both of them,
really scary.
The feeling that she just as easily could have been lost and came so close to, on both their watches, Sabine losing a mentor and a friend and a guardian in many ways, Kanan losing the person he's closest to in his entire life and ever has been. It's impressive to me. Obviously he is a Jedi, but even so, I think the relative equanimity with which Kanan deals with the situation and is able to sort of put the mission first. We see a lot of his Jedi training and old Jedi Order background kind of come through, as opposed to Sabine, who she's a lot younger. She's a teenager still in this, for crying out loud. So I mean, I get it, but it has certainly rattled her, and she feels like it's an internal matter, a Mandalorian matter. She wants to take it into her own hands, and she doesn't really care about the mission.
No,
I think she just wants to get revenge.
Yeah, I think that Sabine is seemingly like, after maybe it was the whole thing with Ketsu that gave her a breakthrough in this whole thing, but like I think she's starting to get ready to confront this whole thing, and we'll see this more in season 3 of her confronting her Mandalorian past and what exactly happened there. But yeah, no, I think it's we'll, as I said again, we'll get there.
Will get there, yeah.
But yeah, Sabine, I think, is out for blood in this episode. I forgot in this episode that Kanan does the thing. So we talked about this, I'm sure, in our Tales of the Jedi episode. But when Dave Filoni first met with George Lucas, and Dave's told the story a few times. When Dave first met with George Lucas, he was like, so it wasn't an interview with George. It was just basically George talked at him for a little while because he's George. He can do whatever the hell he wants, and George is a character.
So that sounds very in character for him. I can't lie.
Yeah, and George explained to Dave a lot of stuff about how he created this world, how he envisioned the world he created, and how the universe and all that kind of stuff, and what he thought of different things like the Force and the Jedi. And one of the things he said about the Jedi is when a Jedi goes into a situation, enters in a negotiation with somebody, like they put their lightsaber down on the table and they say, "Let's talk."
Yeah.
And I think George meant that like as like a sort of like a mythical sort of like allegory, or maybe like a mythic thing. And Dave's done it twice now.
Yeah.
I thought the first time was Tales of the Jedi when Dooku does it, when they're trying to rescue, when Dooku and Qui-Gon are trying to rescue that senator's kid. But no, this is the first time. And I only realized that upon watching it this time around. But I love that Dave has taken that literally from one of his first meetings with George. And the one thing, and I'll try to link the interview if I can remember where it is. But the funny thing about, and then the funny thing he says after that is like, I walk out of the meeting, he's like, I'm never gonna. He says, I walk out of the meeting, I'm like, I'm never gonna get this job. But it was so cool to meet George Lucas. It was so great and all that kind of stuff. And then George's assistant pokes her head from behind a wall, and she just briefly says, "George likes you, you're hired."
Wow, incredible.
The stories Dave tells are always incredible.
The stuff of dreams and legends, to be sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I think it's interesting that I mean, if we want to talk about the lightsaber moment, I think is Kanan very intentionally sort of knowing who Rao is, symbolically trying to invoke the old Jedi Order that Rao remembers.
It's the old ways. It's the
honor and the valor with which they fought together, and he's sort of saying, like, I'm asking you to honor this now. And we find out that Rao is he's more pragmatic than most of the other Mandalorian factions and characters that we know. He's a survivor. He's been through, and
he's only cooperating with the
ton. Yeah,
and he's only cooperating with the Empire, as we find out. We see that Imperial shuttle because the money's good.
Yeah, and because he doesn't want to get annihilated. He says, like, why would I team up with you? I may not. I mean, the quiet part is that we don't know how much he actually likes the Empire or agrees with anything that they're doing. But to him, it's not. To him, he just wants to survive. He doesn't want to be annihilated by the Empire, which he knows is a very real possibility should he try to take a different path.
Yeah, absolutely. And they talk about that time where Skull Squadron, which is the squadron of Mandalorian protectors that Rao led in the Clone Wars, jumping the gun there. Rao led in the Clone Wars, saved Kanan and his master Balaba from droids. And Rao says, that was a long time ago. And I read my notes, no, it was literally the same day, Fen Rao, which is a meta joke because, as I mentioned earlier, the comic where that happens and this episode released on the same day, January 27th, 2016. Wow, was that a while ago? But yeah, no, it was 16 years between that comic and this episode. Yeah. Meanwhile, Sabine's sneaking around and she almost gets away with it, but then she's caught and she invokes the code, which is a big deal.
Yeah.
And by the end of the episode, we can see, what was I going to say? But what was I going to say? Wow, I just totally lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. Sabine invoked the code, but we find out this is what it was. We find out she's learned a lot from Kanan and about his way of doing things, which is because she specifically does not kill anybody. In a code and in an honor duel where the specific goal is that one person dies, she manages to get out of it. It's the Ben quote from New Hope: "You can't win, but there are alternatives to fighting." And of course, that's not exactly true because they do fight, but it's not. But there are alternatives to killing in this scenario. There are alternatives to might makes right, I guess you could say. Yeah. So I think that's great. And then along the way, in the ensuing firefight and just battle in general, the rebels manage a big W. The rebels take Fen Rao as a prisoner. I don't care what they say, he's a prisoner. Like, that's a big deal. Like, so far, a lot of the wins the rebels have been getting are getting a few supplies or not, or having fewer losses than they thought they would. Getting a prisoner and subsequently like allies to their side as powerful as the Protectors of Concord Dawn is a big deal.
Yeah. Or being I don't know if allies in the loosest sense of the
allies,
word. Allies by necessity only.
Eventually be allies.
Yeah.
They will eventually be out. Like by season 3, Rao will be an ally. Like by mid-season 3, Rao will be an ally. I mean allies in the long run. I don't mean in the terms of this episode.
Yeah, but they do, like, the rebels undoubtedly, like, this is one of the first times that we see them, like, flex their muscles, so to speak, even if it is just Kanan pretty much single-handedly through that unbelievable sort of don't understand how he hangs on to the starfighter. Through that sort of sequence where he's standing on top of a spaceship flying through the upper atmosphere at 600 miles an hour.
Which is very cool.
It's very cool, yeah.
Starfighter, which, by the way, the Gauntlet Starfighters look so fucking cool.
No, they're awesome. Yeah, I love the design. But it's just that's just Jedi shit. Like, there's no other explanation for that other than that. He's using the Force, whatever. That makes sense. Because I think it does if you use the Force. But even if it is just Kanan kind of single-handedly capturing Rao, this is the rebels actually, like, flexing their muscles, using their Force to impose upon another group. That's sort of a first and another step towards the greater open warfare that we see in seasons 3 and 4, especially, or also just the fact that they made a big important ally. So yeah, like you said.
Yeah. Do you have anything else for this episode, Jacob? Oh, actually, I do. I'm sorry. I have one more thing, which is Hera says at the end that Sabine is sounding more like a Jedi than a Mandalorian, and Hera, you're a few years too early for that. I'll come back in like 6 years, then we'll talk. But Sabine responds, I guess I've just been raised right. And to which I wrote, Dad got the daughter for the day. You know how that goes. All right. What do you got? Anything else you got for this episode?
I don't think so. Overall, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a solid episode. I think that as much as I love Sabine as a character, I like so far in the show, besides Blood Sisters, we haven't really gotten much that's focused on her. So I liked that this episode we really got to dive a little bit further into who she is and what she values.
Yeah.
And also seeing her sort of relationship with Kanan, who's so often kind of not defined, but really filtered through his relationship with Ezra. I think that's a nice change of pace as well.
Yeah, Kanan and Sabine's relationship, and just Sabine as a character, are both things that will be explored more and more in this show. And I'm glad that we're finally getting to it.
Yeah. Also, in one of the close-ups, obviously she's had the blue hair now for half a season, but this is the first time that I realized she dyed her eyebrows blue as well.
I didn't notice that, but I'm
just
never good at
so
noticing.
fucking committed to the look. You have to that changes my perception of her slightly.
That's going to be it for this episode of Star Wars in a Galaxy. We are off next week, but we will be back very, very soon. The next week, we will have our next episode of Star Wars in a Galaxy with the episodes Legends of the Lasat, The Call, and Homecoming. 3 very important episodes of Star Wars Rebels for character development and galaxy expansion, as well as some really great moments in there as well. Until then, you can find us everywhere at In a Galaxy Pod on BlueSky and Instagram. You can follow me at my link tree, linktr.ee/_Oshifan327. You can listen to us wherever you listen to your podcasts. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Yeah, but the big important thing is, as of the day this comes out tomorrow, is Hyperspace 2. The Hyperspace Gauntlet 2, over 20 competitors, and only one will leave as the winner, who will receive a title shot for any division. We're so excited for Hyperspace 2. We really are. It's going to be so great. We've had so much fun preparing it. It's a lot of prep's gone into it, and I'm really proud of what the team has been able to come up with. But yeah, I think that's it. And so until next time, may the force be with you always.